And you know what? I'm going to update this on my little video. It's to the document, not the document. So there we go. We're going to update that. We're not playing any games or anything. We're just going to do some coding. And what I want to show in this video, so to give you some background, I've been taking some, I've been trying to self-teach myself some coding, in general, uh, mainly with the Ruby programming language and Rails, Ruby on Rails. And then what I ended up doing was I ended up subscribing to a particular website. I'm not going to put names out there, throw names out there, what I'm doing, but I decided to subscribe to some courses online with for front-end web development, maybe a couple of Rails courses. I did some, I took a couple of Ruby programming language courses. I did some CSS, some JavaScript, HTML, front-end web development type stuff, jQuery, and stuff like that. So that's just some background. And what I've been able to find out is that, and I'm glad I've learned Rails. I try to teach myself Rails first because now this is all coming together, and it's really given me a good sense of how powerful Rails is as a framework, because there is a lot included in it when you just create a new project. And so one of the ways I can demonstrate that is how to write to a document. And there's a lot of ways to do it in Rails. And so let's just get to it so I can show you what I mean. Um, so let's do five. Let's call this 5 ways. This is a whole new project, so I'm not cheating. I'm not having like a separate like project up here while I'm just flipping back and forth. So you might think I'm like cheating this. I'm not cheating this. So 5 ways to write to a HTML document, and then we're just going to use Rails to create a new workspace. And real simple is this is going to give me a README document here in just a second. I'm going to get rid of that. So here's the README, and it tells you how you can do some stuff in Cloud9, but we're not interested in that right now. And here's the Rails folders over here. This is the Rails, what you get when you download Rails. So here's our assets, here's our views, and all that. So right off the bat, I'm going to generate down here in our little terminal, we're going to generate a controller, a welcome controller, and just generate a simple index page. So we're going to get that going a while. And once that finishes, we're going to make sure that the root goes to that index page. So that's going to be in our config routes, and just uncomment the root welcome index. All right, so now we have a view in our welcome, and this is what's in the view. So we can actually run this, and we'll have that web page. So I'm going to run it's called Rails server. And once this server is running like it is now, I'm going to click on this link, open it up, and here's this web page. I'll show you what the web page is. There's what's written in the web page when you create the welcome index controller. It's that. And we're going to delete that because we don't care about it. And we're going to save it. Okay, so let's do this. This is all I need for what I'm going to show you. It's just this. And we're going to make sure everything's deleted out of there. We don't want any cheating. No cheating. All right, so the first way is just simply with tags. You have to use tags in HTML to write to the document. So we're going to use H1 tags for all of these things, just so you can see it real nice and big on the web page. So this was written to the document using H1 tags, like that. Save it, and when I refresh the page, this should show up and not this. So here, refresh, and this was written to the document using H1 tags. So that's the first way that we write to the document, is directly on the web, in the view itself, or in this case our code for the web page. I call it the view because in Rails you call these views. See, here's the views folder. You call these views. Okay, so that's the first way. Second way, use another H1 tag. And this, we're going to give an ID of say 2. And this idea of say2 is going to help us because we're going to use JavaScript. And when you use JavaScript to change what's inside elements, you use the IDs of them or the classes, IDs, classes, etc., or even the element itself. But since we're going to have many elements here, we don't want to select H1 because then what we say to write inside the H1 will be written inside both of these H1s, and that's not what we want. And when you use JavaScript, we can use a script right on the page itself like this. And so here we're going to have, and in JavaScript, this is done by using document.getElement by ID. And the ID is say2. Inner HTML. Now this, all this is going to do is go to the inner part of this HTML. So in other words, the tag surrounds something, right? The tags of an HTML document surround something, and inner goes inside right there. So that's what we're going to set equal to what we're going to write. And this was written to the document using a script on the page. Actually, let's call it a JavaScript. Using JavaScript script, JavaScript on the page. All right, and now that should be written here with say2 underneath. This was written to the document using h1 tags. So let's see if that's done. Yes, it was. This was written to the document using JavaScript on the page. So now we have two ways to write to the document, and we're not even halfway done. Here's a third way. We're going to use jQuery to do it the third way. We're going to make a h1 tag again, and we're going to give it another ID. This time, can you guess? Say3. Wow. Now, I just want you to show you that this say3 is not going to show up. And when I refresh this page, nothing shows up here. Okay, I'm going to refresh it again. Nothing shows up here. So I'm not cheating another way where I'm saying, oh, the ID is say2, but somewhere else the ID is say2, and I'm making a page. No. There's no cheating here. This is just the magic of what's going on here. So this say3, nothing is showing up here, but I can prove to you that say3 is actually here. When you inspect the element and you go to the body, here's the h1 ID say3. It's actually here. You can see it highlighted right here. It's actually there on the page. There's just nothing there for the tags to show on the page. So there you go. It's there. All right, so let's go to our JavaScript, our assets JavaScript, and we're just going to change, all we're going to do real simply is just rename this folder, or this file actually, to, instead of welcome coffee, we're going to welcome JS. That's all we're going to do. And inside here, we're going to change all this to \comments, like that, because in JS the backslash is the comment and not the pound sign like it is in coffee. I don't know why coffee changed it from a backslash to a pound sign. Don't know. All right, now that we're in here, we're just going to use our welcome JS and write some jQuery. Here's what I'm going to show you about Rails that's kind of magical. See, Rails, Rails is written with Ruby, so in Ruby you have when you want to include libraries, they're called gems. They're in what's called gems, and so in gems you have a gem file, and in our gem file we have a gem jQuery Rails. This gives us all the workings of jQuery in our application. And I'll show you where else this works, or this happens, is in our application.js when we require jQuery and jQuery UJS. So we have everything we need to write jQuery in Rails already. We don't have to copy and paste CDNs for jQuery, or Google CDNs, or etc., things like that. We already have it. It's already in here due to our gem file and our required jQuery right in our Rails already. So in our welcome.js, we're just going to put, I'm going to write in jQuery now, not JavaScript. So jQuery, the $sign is the selector, and inside document. Now in jQuery, when you want to write to the document, you have to wait till the document's actually ready. So that's what we're going to do here first. is make sure the document's ready. So that's document.ready function, an empty function, I guess, inside here. Yep, just like that. And then once the document is ready, then we can do something inside here, and we're going to write to the page. We're going to select our element first, or select our ID first, which was say 3, correct? I believe so. So let's select our ID, say 3. And as you can see, the pound sign is what the ID is selected with. So the pound, say 3, we'll select that ID. Now remember, over in the view, let's save this first. When we wrote JavaScript, it was document.getElement by ID and then enter HTML. Well, all of this is just shortened in jQuery right down to nothing. I mean, it's a $, say 3, 8.html. It's not that huge long thing. And all we do after HTML is write in parentheses what we want to say in that element. And we're just going to say this was, oh my, I can't type. This was written to the document using a JavaScript file external to the page. Like that. We're going to save it. Or actually, we need a semicolon there. Semicolons end statements in JavaScript. So we're going to put that semicolon at the end, save it, make sure that our say 3 is the same as that say 3, so that's good. Everything lines up. Refresh the page, and we should have our next line. This was written to the document using a JavaScript file external to the page. Boom. 3 ways using just HTML and JavaScript already. All right, moving on. The fourth way. And the fourth way is going to be Ruby. Okay. I don't want tags on this because I want to show you some magic of what goes on in Ruby here. To write Ruby, these views in Rails are automatically .html.erb files, and the ERB stands for eRuby, and all that is you can write Ruby code inside of a page using these tags, which is a percentage mark. In this case, the percentage mark equals because we actually want to show the value of this next object, which is say4. We're going to define a function called say4 in our helper. So in Rails, we have helpers to our views, and here's our welcome helper. And any functions or variables you define in these helpers will be available to the view. So we're going to define say4. We're going to come down here and just make a variable equal to our HTML. This was written to the document using Ruby, using a Ruby helper. There we go. And that's it. Now you're asking, why am I putting the h1 tags here? Well, I want to show you why I am doing that. Because when you return A, you can say HTML safe. And what this HTML safe will do is it'll allow these h1 tags to be put right on the page, and therefore the page will read them as h1 tags. And of course, remember, make sure to always end your functions, or else you're in for a headache. So define say4 and we end it, and inside here we're doing something. So in our view, we have say4. All we're doing is calling this function that we made in the helper. That's all this say4 is doing. We're calling the function, and the function is going to have a value, and we're going to print that to the page. And we know what the value is. It's what we put in the set equal to A. So here we go. Refresh, and here's our number 4. This was written to the document using a Ruby helper. So there's number 4. Number 5. We're going to make number 5 a variable. It's going to be at save5. Now, the at sign is just a convention. It's a way that Rails likes to do things when you're using variables, because variables are when you use the at sign, it's just a local variable. We're not assigning any global variables or anything. It's just a local variable. It's just something that we use in our Rails project. All right, so when we do this, it's going to come from the controller. Well, no, most likely when we have this kind of variable, it's coming from the controller, and that's our fifth way to do it, right from the controller. And what happens in the controller is you're defining the pages, basically. You're defining what information is getting passed into the page, because after all, we're dealing with a website, and when we're dealing with a website, we're dealing with getting a web address, getting the files on a web address. And when that happens, the controller sends information into the page so that it knows what it's working with. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to define this variable save5 in our controller, and it's going to say this. Well, as you see a pattern here, this was written to the page using the controller, using the welcome controller. And because we know the HTML safe, we can actually put the tags in here so that it's in header 1 tags. HTML safe. Just like that. Uh-oh. We have issues. There's something going on with the I'm going to put these in parentheses. Ooh. I'm going to put this in parentheses and there, so that you can see better what's inside parentheses and what the HTML safe is doing. It's actually just making this HTML safe so I can print it to the page. And wow, we got issues. This trying to reconnect. So I don't know what's going on. Wow. Interesting. Let's stop. I can't even stop. So something happened to Cloud9, and I have no idea what it was. Alright, let's try to run this project again. Make sure everything's saved first. Let's go to our views, save everything. And to our controller again. Save it. Everything's saved. Alright, good. Let's run this again. Let's close this. It seems to be back on, so let's run this project once more. Okay, our bash is back. And you'll see down here where the server is going to run. There we go. Oh, here's a link too. And we can open up again. And here, there we go. 5 ways to write to the page. Alright. That's awesome. So I did it from a JavaScript file. I did it right on the view up here with the H1. I did it with a JavaScript script on the page. See the script files on the page? And you can see them all right here. If I inspect and I open up the body, here they all are. H1, this was written to the document. This is written document, written document, written document. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this one down here, 5. It's pretty cool, huh? What I find interesting is this one here. This 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you get to 5, and it's like there's a space in here. It's kind of interesting. But anyways, it laid out right. They're all written down. And yeah, I just wanted to show you that what I think is kind of cool when you put your front-end web development together with your, when you start learning Rails and the asset pipeline and, your views and how, everything comes together. that, you can do that so many different ways. So, like in the back of my mind, I get this idea, when people tell you, okay, you should, write to your view this certain way or this certain way. Well, I'm going to show them this, and I'm going to be like, wait a second. There's a lot of ways to write to a view, a lot of ways to get variables on the view, and stuff, and I can make this pretty much any way I want. I can write to the document a lot of different ways. So, hope this was informative. Hope this was cool. And this is really basic stuff, obviously, but it's just something that people might not get or might not see at first, when they're learning front-end web development, that in a application like Rails, or in a web development environment like Rails, some simple stuff like this sometimes gets overlooked when you're dealing with the Rails stuff, all the magic that happens in Rails, rather than the front-end stuff, of your views and whatnot. So, okay, hope everyone enjoyed